Hey everybody, it's Kiana. Welcome to another episode of She Ventures Out, where we explore bold moves, messy middles, and sometimes the most powerful pivots that you can imagine. As I said, I'm Kiana, your host, executive coach, author, and seasoned navigator of life's many transitions. And today we have an amazing show. I'm so excited for our guest today. But before we get into it, as you all know, we are living in a time where workplace landscapes are shifting and shifting significantly. Diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts are being rolled back. People are questioning where they fit, and career paths feel more uncertain than ever. But here's the thing, and we all know this: change isn't the enemy. How we respond to it defines our success, which is why today's guest is going to give us exactly what we need, because she is always with the good word. Today we have Audra Bohannon. So Audra, for anyone who knows her, is a powerhouse, but she has spent her career equipping professionals, especially professionals of color, to thrive in corporate spaces, while also guiding leaders at every level of organizations to build organizations that are strong, that embrace inclusion, and succeed. She's here to share her wisdom and help us navigate these kind of turbulent waters that we all are experiencing right now. So without further ado, Audra, welcome to the show.
Why, thank you, Kiana. I'm so glad to be here, and I hope I can offer some perspective
Oh,
that
I know that you will
will
offer some. I know that you will
be
offer
of help
some.
to your listeners.
Yes. So, Audra, you and I met, goodness, so many years ago. So, Cycle 7, I can't even remember what the year was, but I had embarked on a leadership program. I was at a point in my career where I remember saying to you when we were doing our introductions, I don't want another project. I don't want to join another leadership program where we have to do a project and, yada, yada, yada. And you talked about how we were the project. And I have to say that leadership program, the African American Leadership Academy, has truly been probably the best leadership program that I've ever gone through, but also the nuggets that you shared in that program still stay with me. And so, and I know everyone who's gone through the program says that. But one in particular that I think I always hold close to me is when you talk about it's not the stimulus, it's the response. And that tee up that I did about kind of everything that's going on in the world today, I think is even more resonant to me, those words that you spoke. So talk a little bit about when you talk about it's not the stimulus, it's the response. For those who don't know that, what do you mean by that? And how can we use those words to navigate kind of what's going on right now?
Absolutely. Kiana, one of the things that we should be aware of is our triggers and our buttons that if get pushed, it causes us to react. And every time we react, we give control back to the stimulus, back to the person, back to the system, and we lose a little bit of our own power. So what you want to be able to do is always start from the place of locus of control. I don't care if it's only 10%, but you say, instead of reacting, which gives it back to the stimulus, you respond. And when you respond, it starts working this, because you tend to be more pragmatic, you tend to be more intentional, you tend to be more thoughtful, you tend to think about what do I want as an outcome, and that locks onto that little bit from 10% to all the way up to 100% of control that you have. And once you start working this, it helps you to find the fissures, it helps you to find the cracks that you can begin to go after, because sometimes when we, like the world we live into now, it's overwhelming in terms of concern.
Yeah.
But sometimes areas of concern, it's like trying to boil the ocean. You can't work that.
Yeah.
But what you can do is you can work control. What can I control? And what can I influence? And that takes you down a totally different road. And so that's one piece. And then the second piece is we underestimate the power within. We underestimate how much we really have. And that takes someone at a fundamental level really believing in their capacity to drive change, believe in their capacity to grow and develop, to refuse the messages that they've received based on stereotypes about people like you. You got to move that to the side, but you have to be steely in your focus around, I know I can do something, and there has to be a way. Because if you want to take it to mindset, you will travel down two different roads. One is, there's nothing I can do, so you do nothing. The other one is, there has to be a way. And that spins you into a problem-solving orientation, which supports you to be more responsive about what's in front of you, as opposed to not.
Well, and I love that, right? And the question though is, so in that moment, right, to your point, when I'm being barraged with these things, right? I mean, we see, people on the job, right? Like a news report just came out that said, federal agencies, told to, cut thousands of jobs, right? So if I'm sitting at my desk and I see that coming out, right? To your point, I'm going to react, right? There's a stimulus. My reaction could be fear. It could be, oh, I need to do X, Y, and Z. But what you're telling us is slow down. So how do we slow down? How do we slow down in that moment, right? So that we don't react in a way that undermines us.
Let's stay with your example. So 1,000 people just got laid off. That's what you hear. The first thing you do if you react is that you allow it to impact your emotions. And like you said, you feel back, you sit back, and now you're vulnerable to, oh, nothing I can do. Another way to approach it is 1,000 people got laid off. And then you say, well, first of all, let me see whether or not this is really true. Let me check the facts. See, that puts you in control. That gives you something to do. Then you say, yeah, that's what they said they're going to do. And then you sit back and you say, okay, I'm going to give it a week, and I'm going to see what happens at the end of the week. And then at the end of the week, you come back and you say, the courts say you can't lay 1,000 people off. You got to do something differently. See, now all that energy I had swirling around was so unnecessary. So you go to the place of saying, let me figure out what I'm saying, what I'm hearing. There's so much in social media. Everybody's giving opinions. Everybody's throwing things out. Some of it is true and some of it is not. Some of it is true today, but it won't be true on Friday, tomorrow. So you gotta put yourself into place and say, let me understand what I'm looking at first before I decide whether I'm going to be emotionally worn down. Let me see. Let me talk to somebody. But see, that's 100% within my control.
Yeah, I love that. There was this piece that Ezra Klein did the other day, and he was saying that very thing, right? He was saying the way that a lot of this is working is it makes us believe that everything that we're hearing is the truth. But to your point, in the pausing, right? We see something come out on Monday, we pause, and then on Wednesday, the court says, no, you can't do that. Or on Thursday, an organization like Costco says, no, we're not walking away from her, right? And so to your point, right, like the pausing, the digging deeper, the seeking real truth, right, does get us to a place of, oh, I got worked up for nothing.
Right. And here's one other thing. You can get you a posse, you can get you a cadre, you can get you a group where your name of your group is Find the Truth Group. So the minute something comes out, you all get together on a Zoom call, and you're not on a Zoom call to moan and groan and complain and say there's nothing we can do. You get on a Zoom call to say, what did you find out? What have we heard? So your spirit of connection is around lifting up.
Yeah.
Even if we find out, yeah, they're going to defund HBCUs by $90 million. Maybe that really would be the truth, and they can get away with it. Then the question is, what are we going to do about it?
Right.
because the HBCUs can't close. So we're going to have to figure out another method.
Right. Well, and to that point, right? So there are some things that we are seeing, right? We are seeing that there are companies who have, scaled back their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm being intentional to actually say the words versus allowing people to turn it into an acronym, right? And so, yeah, so they are scaling back their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And folks who are in organizations where that's happening are starting to feel like, do I belong here? Right? Is this a message being sent about, whether or not this organization still aligns with my values? And so, how would you recommend someone who's in an organization like that or who's feeling like that assess whether it's time to pivot or should they stay the course?
Well, let me put it this way. If they feel, based on people dismantling ERGs or the diversity, equity, inclusion function is no longer part of the organization. When you hear that, and then you see it happening, then you need to ask a fundamental question, especially for for-profit corporations. At the end of the day, it's shareholder value. The thing that's going to support shareholder value is making sure you got talent in the right places at the right time doing the right work. So I need to sit back and say to myself, what's the talent play on all of this? How is it going to really impact us moving forward as an organization? What is the talk track that I'm hearing? What messages are people saying? Based on what's happening, what's the impact it's having on my job? Because deep down, and I can't say this for sure, but it is my intuitive sense is telling me, deep down, many people should not be shocked at what their companies are doing. Whether it is a Costco or whether it's a Target. There were cues and signals all along the way that tells you what their commitment really is to providing opportunities and growth engagements for everyone, no matter what their difference is. So if I'm sitting up here feeling bad, like, oh my God, they just dismantled the diversity, equity, and inclusion department. Take that and bring it to your own self, to your own situation. OMG, I've been stuck in the same job for 6 years. Link those two together.
Right.
So make sure you're clear about your world and then also understand how it taps into the bigger world. And if your values are not aligned with the values of the organization, you probably should have pivoted. Not just now, you probably should have pivoted a long time ago if that was significant to how you operate. And see, that's what I think, this might sound like heresy, but we have in this instance, I'm saying we, as Black people,
Yes.
we have colluded in our own oppression. So
Say more about that.
when we get upset, it's okay to be upset. But I also have to ask myself the point, how have I moved through my career? Is my performance exacting? Did I do a good job of building strong relationships with people across the organization? Do I know how to influence? Do I understand how to be agile? Do I know how to pivot? Have I committed to my own growth and development, or have I been in my comfort zone? And I tell people all the time, being in your comfort zone is expensive. Now we're seeing it because there are a lot of people that are in situations where they've been in their comfort zone. I'm not saying everybody,
Right.
but there are people who have been in their comfort zone, and the cost of that is their development. Now, if they want to put themselves on the market, or if they get laid off, they're uncomfortable and scared because they don't think they can find another job, or they don't think they got the right skills. But see, you should have been working it all along. So that's what I mean. Sometimes we collude with, you sit up there, they dismantle. don't just look at the fact that they just dismantled your diversity, equity, and inclusion function. Look at the fact that people like you have not moved in the organization for many years, and nobody says that that's bad.
Right.
To me, that's bad too.
Yes.
So
Well,
you,
and I think to your
yeah,
point, the collusion is also the not taking the reins, right? Waiting for someone to tap you on the
that's it.
shoulder, waiting for someone. Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
You know what are I was talking with a group, and they're concerned about the fact that the organization might ERGs might go away. And I looked at them and I said, let's assume they do go away. What are you going to do? And there was dead silence. If your ERG is important to you, meet on Saturdays over somebody's house for breakfast and keep the meetings going and support each other to get better. See, that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes we don't understand the power within, and we are too caught up in the status quo. And this is, it's not a non sequitur because it does link. I think sometimes organizations pay you money, but don't develop you.
Yeah.
And they use money as a pacifier. And you look up and you see that you're monetarily doing well. But when you really look at it deep down, you're not on anybody's short list. You're not seen as a player or a rock star in the organization. You're seen as somebody that just does the status quo. You can pay your mortgage. You can go on vacation. You can even buy a new car whenever you want to. But when it comes to the impact you can make around legacy and around finding out how good you can be and really being outstanding in your contribution, some of us have settled. So that's another way that I'm talking about,
Yeah.
that we have colluded in our own oppression.
Where do you think that comes from though, right? Like where is that settling coming from? Because I imagine that there are people who say, well, that's exactly why I go to work, to do the very things that you talked about, pay my mortgage, go on vacation, make sure my family's well. And I go home and I feel like, I've done the thing I'm supposed to do.
Okay, now let's. I bet you could interview 100 people, and you say, when you got hired to this corporation, on the first day when you came into that organization, tell me you walked in saying, I can pay my mortgage.
Right.
No, we come in excited. We want to contribute. We want to be successful. We want to grow. We want to be upwardly mobile. We want to have access to the world. We want to understand. Those are all the things we're doing.
Yeah.
We're not talking about no mortgage or being able to go home every day at 5 o'clock. No. So when did that start seeping in? When did you start shifting where your excitement and your engagement and your thinking around possibilities started to diminish? Because when they start to diminish and anything goes after your spirit, the way you manage it is you go home and have a grilled cheese sandwich and a cup of Campbell's tomato soup. Because home is always safe.
Yeah.
And you say, I don't have to deal with all of this. I'm paying let me just go to work and pay my mortgage. I had I was working with an insurance company and I was doing focus groups. And this was 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to show you how it can play out in organizations.
Okay.
9 o'clock in the morning. And they walked in and they looked tired. They looked worn down. Their affect was flat. And I said, please share with me your role in the organization and how long you've been with the organization. PhD, scientist, engineer. I've been with the company 25 years, 30 years. And I'm looking around and I'm saying, wow. And I asked the question, how were they doing? And they weren't doing well. And I'm sorry, I don't know if I said this was all black and brown folks.
No. Okay.
All black and brown folks. And I said, how are you doing? And I could tell. I could tell by the way they walked in the room they weren't doing well. And so I said, why do you stay? And this one black woman said, I have applied for 25 jobs and I have not received any feedback. So let me tell you why I'm staying. I got 2 more years and I'll be out of here. I'm staying for my benefits and my retirement. That's why I'm staying. But you know you're not clearly getting a whole lot of work out of it. Right. I said, okay. And so when I got ready, when everybody was walking out, this young Hispanic man looked at me and said, Miss Bohannon, would you please tell our leadership to believe in our potential? And I said, yes, I will. Now, fast forward to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now I have to do a focus group with the leadership team. And here they come walking in, finger popping, just finger popping. Everybody knows each other. Got the bottles of water, just sitting there, just laughing and talking. It was the difference between 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock was huge.
Yes.
And they sat down and I started talking to them. And I finally asked, I said, how many moves have you made? No, give me your tenure. And there as well, 20, 25, 30 years. How many moves have you made in that time? Oh, too many to count. I said, how many of the moves did you apply for? They said, apply for? We don't apply for. I mean, they looked at me like I had said something really, really bad.
Right.
They said, we haven't applied for jobs. We get tapped. I said, how many of you in this room have applied, other than early in your career, have applied for the key roles that got you to the place you are today? Not one hand went up. So that's the difference. Formal policy, informal practice. Formal policy, if you want a new job, you go on the website and you apply. Go to HR and apply. Informal policies, you get tapped. One you're seen as just steady. The other one you're seen as a rock star, or you're seen as somebody that's going somewhere in the organization. So you can't ignore the power of expectations because we tend to rise to that level.
Yeah.
And so you have a whole lot of people that just, they get worn down.
Right.
And when they allow being weary to impact their excellence, they're out of play.
So, so that is a good segue to, one of the things that I think is so critical and, and I think that you do as well, right, is this idea of resilience, right? Because, you're talking about, kind of not getting weary and well doing, right? And so, we often think about resilience as either something you have or you don't have. But, you talk about it as a skill that can be built, right? And so how can somebody do that, right? So I think about this woman who's applied for 25 jobs, right? Has been passed over, is seeing people all around her get tapped for things, right? And right, like she needs resilience, right? Like she needs a lot of things, but one of the things that she probably needs in that moment, right, is this resilience, this feeling that you're talking about of not just saying I'm just resigned to going home to the grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup and paying my mortgage and waiting until my last day.
When it comes to resilience, the first thing is, do you take things personally or do you take personal responsibility? That's the first thing. If you take things personally, you're not going to be resilient, because when you have a significant failure, you will say, I am a failure. You'll take it in, you take it personally. When you take personal responsibility, you say that strategy did not work. What am I going to do the next time? And what am I going to do the next time? When you take personal responsibility, there's always a next time, and that builds resiliency. And resiliency is closely aligned with your problem-solving orientation. So thoughts determine action. There has to be a way. That sharpens your problem-solving orientation. So when you start just automatically understanding there has to be a way, and you move through the world and you're always trying to understand what's in front of you and what you have control over, then you take personal responsibility to think about this approach did not work, so therefore I'm going to have to try something else. All of that just keeps going around and around and around. And so you find yourself bouncing right back. And the thing about it is, you also see the world as something in which you can impact.
Yeah.
So you have a high impact belief system. And when you have a high impact belief system, you don't give up. You take it all the way to the mat. And you will just keep trying, but you don't try the same thing. You refine your effort based on what the failure is telling you did that did not work. I'm not going to keep doing exactly the same thing. You know the definition of insanity.
Yes.
But what I will do is look back and say, you know what, there's a way this can go. And then here's the last one. And it's not just around resiliency. It really is sort of a life principle. You don't do things alone. So if you need to know whether to pivot, if you need to know whether to leave the company, if you need to know whether you should go after this promotion, whatever it is that is a conundrum or is something that is significant in your head, you need to vet it to get others' perspective, because the only perspective you have is yours. And that's limited. Now, at the end, you got the power of choice in terms of making the decision. But you want to touch, I don't think of any critical decision I have to make in my life. I would never do it by myself. I'm always canvassing and having conversations with folks. I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Or after I get over the failure, call up, you're not going to believe I screwed this up. So that's another thing. So it's not just your mindset, but surrounding yourself with people who have similar mindsets that can help you understand perspective, which will help you to problem solve, which will help you to be resilient, and it will help you to stay in motion.
Well, and it sounds too, Audra, that ties to your point earlier about, like not doing things based off of emotion and not taking things personal, right? And so sometimes when we are stuck in that spiral of feeling like it's personal or, feeling, emotional, having those other people to bounce things off of, right, kind of minimizes the fact that we are spiraling in that, whatever that emotion is.
Yeah. And let me add one more piece too, Kiana. And that is, we give too much power to other people to direct our lives. And what do I mean by that? If I were to say to you, Kiana, you did an outstanding job, you would be happy. And you take that as feedback. But that's not feedback, that's just someone's opinion. So when I also tell you, you did a horrible job and I don't even know why we should keep you, that also is my opinion. And I think too often we misinterpret people's opinions as feedback.
Yeah.
If I can't close my eyes and see what you say and can see how I can repeat it or not repeat it, because it should be based on data, information that informs you about how well you did or did not do at a task. And if you can't give me anything that can help me figure that piece out, then it is just your opinion. And I think especially for people who have to deal with stereotypes around being genetically inferior, that they're lazy, they're stupid, they're dumb, you get all these messages from around you, you have to be really intentional about listening to what people say and make sure that they're not saying anything around your ability or your capacity to learn. So you have to, so that's another thing. It drives me nuts because I hear
Yes.
people getting all this stuff coming at them and it defeats them. And I said, you're listening to somebody's opinion.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. I had a moment like that. So, when I was in Portland, it was a crazy time, but there was this one particular newspaper that was always writing these hit pieces or whatever. And, I made the mistake of reading the comment section one time. And, person after person was saying, she's a DEI hire, she's a DEI, like over and over and over again. And I think to your point, the first time you see something like that, you're like, like, let me roll out all my degrees. Let me roll out all my experience, right? Like you feel like equipped for that, right? But then, the next article and the next article and the next article. And to your point, it does start to chip away at you. And if you don't have, people around you who are, combating those narratives, and it just feels like you're the only one combating those narratives, it can take you to that place. And, actually just hearing you say those things, like I feel like you were talking to Kiana like a year ago, like telling me like, girl, like that's just their opinion. But in that moment, to your point, it didn't feel like that. It felt like, yeah, it felt horrible.
And here's one more point, because this is heavy. Many of us who've been underserved, who've been seen as invisible, who are thought not to be able to think because of the color of our skin, we will spend our entire lives trying to prove that we are smart enough.
Yeah.
That takes so much energy.
Yes.
Here's an alternative. Instead of me going through the world as a black woman trying to prove to white people that I'm smart, I go through the world focusing on improving. Put an I and an M in front of prove. I go through the world improving to a standard of excellence. I don't compare myself to white people. Since when should they represent the standard? But what I will do is to say, Audra, every day when you get up, if you're committed to your growth and your development, you're going to keep getting better and better, and you're going to improve and improve and improve to a standard of excellence. The outcome is the outcome. But how you get there,
Yeah.
improving versus proving, is two different things. Because, I can, when I walk through go through the world and don't have to think about the fact that I got to prove to you that I'm smart enough.
Right.
No, we're not going to play that. We're not going to play that today.
Right.
Because, and you've heard me say this before, one of the most complex things you can do is to speak a human language. And if you can speak a human language at 2 or 3, you are capable of doing a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful that people don't go after your spirit. There was a woman, black woman, just promoted, got a big job, and she wanted to do something special for her mother. And her mother she said, my mom always wanted an Hermes scarf. So she flew to New York and went to the Hermes store to get her mother an Hermes scarf. And when she, because, those stores, they got doorbells.
Right.
She pushed the doorbell and they wouldn't let her in. And she said it was like she called it spirit murder. That people, if you're not careful, will go after and pinch you. It pinches you. It's such a small pinch. You look down and you say, oh, that wasn't nothing. But after a while, you start getting it. Now, some people call it microaggressions. You can call it whatever you want to. But when she shared the story, the power of that, when she said spirit murder, took me to another whole place.
Yes.
And I thought about, how do I get up and think about my best and what is required to be my best towards a standard of excellence, and dull the noise
Yeah.
around people sending me messages about what they think I can or cannot do based on the group they have assumed that I belong to.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and I also wonder what role you think self-compassion has in these moments as well, right? Because a lot of these organizations, folks are the only at a particular level, or they feel alone in these environments where these different things are happening. And it's easy, like, we just talked about, to, allow these things to chip away. So like how can people invite self-compassion in these moments?
I think they can invite self-compassion, be very compassionate around self-understanding what they have to deal with, and bring empathy to that. But it should not stop them, and it should not cause them to say, I guess I don't have to. No, you do. And so self-direction, to me, is equally as important, and moving through the world with a level of intentionality. If I am the only one that looks like me in my group, I got to find me some other people that look like me, and we got to figure this out. So the thing about it, there are few things that represent impenetrable barriers, even racism. Few things. So the goal is go after fissures, go after cracks. This is the hand I've been dealt. So how am I going to play it? Instead of me, oh, well, I'm the only. No, okay. I'm the only one, but I'm going to figure out how I'm going to navigate being the only one to get the outcome that I want. And see, we don't think enough of what is the outcome we want. Also, we don't think enough at times to make ask for what we want. Now, people can keep bringing us stuff, and we're good go-to people. We're good at, give it to Audra, give it to Audra, give it to Audra. But we don't leverage our brilliance. We don't leverage our capability and experience to make things happen for us.
So say more about that, right? How can, like what does that look like in practice?
Here's a good example. So I'm your go-to. And Audra will deliver. I got your back. I'm always there. And so you usually come in and you give me something, and I turn around and you go off, and you thinking as you walking back to your office or you getting off the Zoom call, you feeling so good. Because I know Audra's going to take care of that. This is where you have locus of control. You come into my office and you say, Audra, this is what I need for you to do. And I say, Kiana, more than glad to do it. And you get ready to turn around and I say, Kiana, wait a minute. There's something I need from you. It's just that simple. I had a dear friend who was so angry he was going to quit his job. He was in banking. He got branch manager. He got distinguished on his audits. He was outstanding. And he said, and every time they would acknowledge him, they would give him a bigger branch with more problems. And so he sat down with me and he said, Audra, I'm sick and tired of them. I'm getting ready to quit because they won't give me the promotion I want. And then I said, if I were them, I wouldn't do it either. And he was so angry and so mad at me. I said, because you're the cleanup man. That's your brand in the organization. That's your narrative. Because I said, there's nothing wrong with you sitting up there saying, you know what? I've cleaned up these last 4 branches and I'm going to clean this one up too. But I need a vice presidency out of this. What are they going to say? You have the lever. So there are times when we're at our best that we have levers that we don't pull.
Yeah.
And because we don't pull them, it ends up things don't happen for us, and we see it happening for other people. And then that's when we start slowing down. And when we slow down, our performance is not exacting. And then eventually we're at a place where the organization does not even consider us, because now you done lost your lever.
Which goes back to your point about constantly thinking strategically, constantly kind of pulling the emotion out of it, right? Because in that moment, right, you want them to tap you, right? You want them to say, Bob, you did a great job on the last 4 cleanups and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. But what you're saying is, like, stop all that. Stop worrying about somebody validating you and go get the thing that you want.
I'm a big proponent of engineer. When you can see it, then you engineer to increase the probability you can get it. but sometimes we can't see. And that closes the aperture around understanding your value and your worth. We got to open the aperture up. I think see is a powerful word. I think pragmatic is a powerful word. See, and then determine how you're going to play chess, how you're going to play one move to get you prepared for the next move. You have 100% control over that. And that's why I said earlier, we have far more power within than we realize. And we allow all of this stuff that's rolling out there to control us instead of saying, I am going to control, I am going to manage, I am going to influence and do the things that are necessary so that when I look back, I'm a grand old who said, I have lived well. Yeah. I have lived a fulfilling life. That's what I'm going to commit to me.
Well, and that ties to, and this is something that you and I had talked about, right? Like the stories that we tell ourselves, right? Like the mindsets that we hold about who's in control, where the power lies, somebody giving me something, all of those types of things. So talk about how we need to start shifting our mindset, shifting the words that we're speaking, like moving from this idea of scarcity into abundance.
This is truly a mindset shift, because a mindset drives your thinking and feelings and eventually behaviors around what you do every day. So if someone were to come up to you and say, I really don't believe you can do these things, you would get so mad at them. But my question to you is, do you believe yourself that you have all this stuff to give? So it's a mindset, but it's also your belief system. It has to be a non-negotiable. I truly believe that I can make an impact. I truly believe that I can make a difference. I truly believe that I can fill in the blank. So you have to believe that, because that's going to trigger your problem-solving orientation, because if it doesn't work, something must have been gone wrong, because I believe I can do that. That's what a high-impact belief system is talking about. So that's what you have to do. So, but your mind has to be around, I am in control of how I live my life. All of this, everything we've been talking about, Kiana, you have to disrupt the default. You have to disrupt the status quo. That's another thing you have to do. If you're in your comfort zone, if you're living your life subconsciously, if it's the same old, and there's not a whole lot of stuff going on around risk-taking, around influencing, around being clear about what you want as your outcomes, then it's not going to happen. Especially now. Yeah. You need to be so alert and in tune. I tell everybody I talk to, and I'm telling your listeners the same. If you're not doing something different than you were 6 months ago, if you have not understood change and embraced it and moving forward, then you're setting yourself up to be left behind. Because we're going to get through all of this. We might be ragged, we might be worn down, but there will be winners and there will be losers. And you have to make the decision, which one will you be? And if you've decided you're going to be a winner, that means you're all out. You're all in. This is not the time to waffle. This is not the time to be ambivalent. This is not the time to be in a comfort zone. This is the time to be in motion, making moves, looking around, deciding how to get to your own place of peace, to take care of your well-being, but at the same time knowing things are crazy out here, and I got to figure out a way I'm going to navigate it, because somebody's out here figuring it out.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to get you out of here on this question because it ties to what you were just talking about, right? Because there's a lot of conversation right now, especially from the 92% who are saying, we did what we were supposed to do, and I'm going to rest now, right? I'm going to rest. I'm going to, kind of let, the chips fall where they may. And I hear in what you just said a balance in that, right? Like, yes, maintain your well-being. Yes, maintain your mental health, but also, and fill in the blank.
If not us, who? At the end of the day, you can take a respite. You can go sit out and look at the sun set. You can take the time, but you can't stay there. We all have to be in, but we have to be in not coming from a place where we're exhausted and on fumes. We all have to be in coming from a place where we're at our best. So whatever you need to do to be at your best, do it, but stay in because you are needed.
Wonderful. Okay, everybody, that is this week's episode of She Ventures Out. Audra, thank you so much for being on. It was everything that I hoped it would be and more. And for our listeners, as always, you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, and you can find us on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. And until next time, keep venturing out. See you soon.
Boxland Media. Think big.